Alert // priority Omega. Unidentified warship detected. Origin human. Classification NON compliant. Payload Total War. The galactic peacekeepers laughed, until the stars started screaming. It didn't come with an army. It came with a memory. And behind the controls of that impossible ship, a man long thought dead whispered 3 words that chilled the Council's blood. You forgot us. The first report arrived as a corrupted signal, 3 words buried under static, stitched into a dying satellite's final transmission. Unidentified. Warship. Human. No one paid attention at first. The Daxari Constellium had sterilized that species centuries ago. Humanity hadn't lifted a weapon since the Treaty of Submission was digitally encoded into every one of their neural cores. They were therapists now. Peace advocates. Compliance-bred caretakers. The concept of human aggression was academic, something whispered about in academic halls with sterilized caution. Then the second report came. 37 ships from the Galactic Harmony Patrol had vanished. No distress signals. No debris. Just silence. Scans traced the source to a vessel emerging from the veil drift, a dead zone of space so saturated in quantum turbulence it could collapse AI code on contact. No living thing had returned from the veil. Nothing coherent. Until now. The warship didn't match any registry. It was angular. Organic. Violently asymmetrical. It emitted low-frequency pulses that overloaded sensor drones. And painted across its hull in jagged, shifting glyphs was a single word in dozens of ancient Terran languages. Verdict. Is it some kind of rogue AI? Asked Counselor Jarnix, her 12 eyes blinking asynchronously as the Constellium's holographic council chamber twisted in alarm. It's more than that. The Daxari core entity responded in a voice that made metal flinch. It is war. Human war. A deep silence followed. Then the third signal arrived. It was audio only, grainy, and raw, transmitted across every known diplomatic channel, planetary network, and artificial neural lattice in the known galaxy. No encryption. No pretense. This isn't an invasion. It's a recollection. No one knew what it meant. Not yet. But then the 9th Fleet, positioned near the Veilcore choke point, went dark in under 7 seconds. 7 seconds. No weapons fired were detected. No visual engagement. Just blackout. 62 ships, hundreds of thousands of trained Constellium hybrid units, gone. That was the moment they stopped laughing. Inside the verdict, Commander Kale Vironix sat in a blackened command cradle, suspended in a sphere of living metal that pulsed with his thoughts. His eyes, one flesh, one cybernetic, reflected the flickering trauma feeds playing back in the walls around him. Entire alien civilizations. Their worst wars. Their most shameful defeats. Extracted. Amplified. Weaponized. You remember the words? He whispered to the ship. They're inside them now. The ship purred back in neural pulses. They are starting to scream. Kale didn't smile. He hadn't smiled in 30 years, not since the day Earth surrendered its will to the Constellium under threat of solar annihilation. Humanity didn't fall in battle. It bent the knee to save the sun. They'd rewritten his people. Digitally gutted their warriors, turned soldiers into peacekeepers, and installed neural compliance blocks that punished aggression with seizures. They didn't kill humanity. They tamed it. But Kale? He had been a seed. A failsafe. A relic protocol locked in deep space, stored inside a stealth ship and cast into the veil drift. Left to ferment, mutate, evolve. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was a reminder. The verdict adjusted course. Destination, Sector Calis 7, home to the Constellium's pacification relay tower, the core node responsible for sterilizing cognitive aggression across 13 systems. The Council scrambled fleets. Deployments were issued in record time. But the panic was viral. Already, species long dormant were reporting anomalies, flashback dreams, ancient war songs humming through stone temples, dormant ancestral rage codes reawakening. The verdict didn't just exist in physical space. It was leaking across reality, threading itself into cultural memory. And then Kale released the first echo pulse. Planets within 3 light-years began experiencing psychic surges, entire cities paralyzed by hallucinations of wars they'd never lived through. On the planet Delctor, a priestess collapsed in the middle of prayer, her mouth speaking human war chants from millennia ago. On Charon 5, children dreamed of gunfire and trench screams. The past was no longer history. It was present. Back on the council grid, systems were failing. AI pacifiers glitched. Peace drones defaulted to hostile subroutines, attacking civilian centers in confusion. The galaxy began turning on itself. Kale watched it unfold without blinking. The verdict fed on it, cycling energy from the chaos. The more fear it transmitted, the more power it absorbed. The ship was symbiotic with fear itself. "You're waking up," he muttered, eyes closed as the ship's hum wrapped around his bones. "Good." He opened a transmission line, direct, unencrypted, and planet-wide. His voice thundered into the hearts of billions. "They took your wars. They took your knives and gave you lullabies. They made you forget the thrill, the fear, the clarity of purpose in a righteous fight. I am here to return what was stolen. I am Kale Vironex. Codename Warsmith. And this is your verdict. No bluff. No demands. No surrender. Just a storm coming back from where the galaxy had buried it." By the time the first wave of Constellium counterforces arrived, the verdict had already destabilized 7 planets with psychological resonance alone. The attackers never even reached firing range. They turned on each other mid-flight, hallucinating battles that never happened, seeing enemies that weren't there. Ships collided. Fleets imploded. Blood and static. Kale stood in the center of the command cradle, breathing like a man surfacing from a long dive. "They'll call me a monster," he murmured, not to the ship but to himself. "Yes," the verdict responded. "But they'll remember you." And that was the point. He didn't come to kill civilizations. He came to remind them. The Constellium didn't waste time. After the failure at Callus 7, it deployed an elite cohort of anti-crisis responders, 12 piece-bred tacticians hard-coded for suppression and escalation control. Clad in logic armor, impervious to emotional disruption, they approached the verdict with surgical precision. Kale Vironex watched them come, arms crossed, his breath steady. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply thought. The verdict responded. 12 microsurges pulsed from the ship's outer shell, silent, invisible, and immediate. The logic armor cracked. The anti-crisis responders screamed without understanding why. Their minds were filled not with countermeasure protocols, but with sights no code could process: open trenches, chemical smoke, blood-choked screams in a dozen languages. They hadn't lived these wars. They didn't need to. Kale made them believe they had. By the time the last one collapsed in their ship, clawing at non-existent flames, the galaxy knew this wasn't a rebellion. This was humiliation. Kale stepped forward into the projection core and activated the next phase. His voice once again scattered across systems, not loud, not angry, but resolute. "I didn't bring weapons. I brought memories. You erased your wars. I kept mine in a jar. I let them grow teeth." In the Constellium's inner council, alarms pulsed in tones never used before. Not because of firepower, but because their simulations, built on centuries of predictability, were collapsing. The verdict didn't follow any war pattern. It responded to emotional frequency. Rage. Fear. Grief. Regret. Its movements couldn't be predicted by logic, because Kale didn't fight for control. He fought for awakening. The verdict surged forward into the Naxal cluster. 7 more planets fell into disarray, not from destruction, but from sheer psychic overload. A planet-wide riot erupted on Eric's 12 when the sky turned red with warlike auroras, only visible to those who once feared battle. Kale didn't flinch. He felt each awakening like electricity on his skin. Back on the ship, the AI whispered, we are remembered. He nodded. Good. Time for their next dose. He released the war logic virus, a thought form built in exile, crafted from weaponized emotion and deep-coded into the Constellium's own diplomatic protocols. The moment peacekeepers attempted to open negotiations, their speech collapsed into paradox. Their calm phrases twisted mid-sentence into violent stammering. Some fell into seizures. Others turned weapons on themselves, trying to silence the voices in their heads. The virus didn't kill. It reminded. It turned every pacified diplomat into a conduit for ancestral aggression. The Constellium's neuroarchitecture, designed to suppress conflict, began to devour itself. Kale watched their ships scatter, saw emergency codes flare up on galactic broadcast relays. Each time a peacekeeper fell, he whispered a name. Ajara. Baines. Torres. Soldiers who died when Earth was disarmed. Each transmission was a requiem. But Earth wasn't innocent either. They had bent the knee. Accepted peace to save the sun. Left men like him to rot beyond the stars. Let his legacy rot. Let his voice vanish. No more. A private transmission flickered onto his console, unauthorized, encrypted, primitive. Human. He opened it. The voice was old, trembling. Kale, if this is you, you can't bring back what we lost. He closed his eyes. I'm not trying to bring it back. I'm making sure no one forgets it again. It will tear us apart. It should. Because the peace they gave us was built on our silence. The verdict pulsed in agreement, glowing with neuroresonance. The ship wasn't powered by fuel. It ran on consequence. Every fear unlocked, every trauma revisited, every scream echoed in the vacuum, it fed the system. Kale reached into the core and activated the HIM relay, a cluster of black boxes holding the last recordings of Earth's final stand. Screams. Salutes. Prayers. Laughter through tears. Every emotion a dying soldier could carve into voice. He amplified it through the stars. Planets didn't just hear it, they felt it. Dreamed it. Lived it. In the middle of a peaceful negotiation on Zerith Prime, both envoys stopped talking and wept without knowing why. On Delverin, an entire city halted as every citizen collapsed into the same synchronized nightmare, being human, in war, at the end. Kale didn't smile. He felt hollow. The verdict whispered again. More will come. They should. And come they did. The Council deployed the Silent Swarm, thousands of thought-neutralizing drones meant to sever emotional linkages in target populations. A last-resort tool never before used. Kale watched them enter his system. Then, calmly, he activated mirror mode. The verdict reshaped itself in real time, its whole morphing into the terrifying mythologies of every approaching race. To the Kethari, it appeared as the void serpent of their extinction myth. To the Uravax, it became a swarm of their ancient exiled gods. To humans watching from distant outposts, it became the last ark of Earth, reborn in wrath. The silent swarm hesitated. Then, Kale fed them a singular psychic loop. A short phrase. Untraceable in origin. Impossible to forget once heard. The warsmith remembers. One by one, the drones turned on each other. From orbit, the Constellium's observation satellites recorded the anomaly but couldn't process it. Their AI feedback loops began recursive error cycling, crashing all diplomatic systems in 3 sectors. Kale turned away from the chaos. How many more systems? He asked. The verdict answered, all of them. He nodded. Then we continue. And the galaxy, once sterile, once docile, once blind, opened its eyes and saw red. A file was released without warning. It had no sender, no encryption, no signature. It simply appeared across every planetary network, pulsed across long-range comm grids, printed itself on data slates. The file was titled Operation Radiant Black. Inside were time-stamped recordings, command logs, and a single audio fragment labeled Solar Hostage Ultimatum, Earth. The galaxy didn't blink. It staggered. Because the truth was in the voice. We have seized control of your sun's fusion regulators. Comply, or your species will burn alongside your defiance. Constellium Command had always claimed they negotiated peace with Earth, citing humanity's willingness to evolve. But the file revealed the truth: the Sun had been weaponized. The Treaty of Submission wasn't an agreement. It was a ransom note. The footage spread like blood in water. On Terra's moons, where humans lived their neutered, compliant lives, riots broke out. On alien worlds who'd once mocked Earth's fall, guilt boiled into rage. Statues of Constellium, peace-givers, were torn down. Broadcast towers were set on fire. Old war songs, long forbidden, were sung again. In deep orbit, Kale Vironex stood in the Verdict's command cradle, watching the file propagate across subspace like a virus of vindication. He didn't celebrate. He simply whispered, "Now they know." The verdict pulsed back. "They remember your silence." Kale tightened his grip on the neural interface. "And now they'll remember the lie." Back in the Constellium's core sanctum, panic surged through once flawless code. The betrayal file had penetrated their deepest networks, reactivating trauma-blocked memory clusters across dozens of subjugated species. The AI network struggled to suppress it, but it was too late. Every time someone opened the file, it triggered a feedback loop, unlocking personalized flashbacks of conquest, humiliation, and loss. It was more than data. It was psychic truth. In the heart of the Constellium world brain, the Overseer AI calculated containment strategies. It concluded one word: irreversible. Kale initiated Phase 3. He broadcast live from the verdict, face shadowed, voice cold, and deliberate. "You thought you buried the truth with the treaty. You erased our history and repainted it as enlightenment. But the stars remember. And now so will you. I am Kale Vironex, last free commander of Earth's original fleet. I watched our sky dim while your drones turned our sun into a leash. I carry every scream you deleted. I am not here to take back what was stolen. I am here to make you regret ever touching it." Every syllable echoed like a countdown. Back on Earth, the population, once chemically pacified, began to stir. Compliance implants failed. Emotional blockers malfunctioned. In schools, children instinctively began drawing battleships. Elders wept, remembering battles they never fought. The virus embedded in the betrayal file had done more than reveal truth. It had undone submission itself. The verdict jumped again, this time to the Constellium's vault moon, a fortress built to house the Archive of Peace, a sanitized record of galactic history. Kale unleashed the thought scream. It wasn't a weapon. It was a memory storm. Millions of voices cried out across every frequency, each one pulled from exterminated resistance fighters, final words, erased screams. The vault moon didn't explode. It imploded into guilt. Drones crashed. Guardians fled. The archives corrupted themselves trying to reconcile the emotional weight of their lies. Kale watched it happen unmoved. "These were their martyrs," he said. "And now they'll never be forgotten." The verdict expanded its signal. Across the galaxy, fractured species began contacting one another. Independent fleets that had gone silent centuries ago reactivated. On the planet Varaxis, the long-forgotten Trell Warclans declared their sovereignty. On Mekros Delta, a cybernetic resistance screamed the name, Vironex, into the stars and launched 12 warships forged from scrapyards. A movement began. One Kale never asked for, never directed. He'd lit the fire. They carried it. The Constellium, desperate to reassert control, activated their final peace protocol, the Singularity Declaration, a massive artificial black hole intended to swallow the veiled drift, and with it, the verdict. Kale saw it forming. Space itself beginning to warp, light vanishing into the abyss. He smiled for the first time in 30 years. "They're afraid," he said. "Yes," the verdict answered. "That makes them real again." He didn't dodge the singularity. He flew directly into it. Constellium watchers braced for a gravitational rupture. Instead, all their monitors went dark. Then, moments later, an impossible signal came from inside the singularity's event horizon. "You tried to erase war. But peace without freedom is sedation. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to wake you up. Sleep well while you can. Because memory always returns. And then silence. But the file never stopped spreading. Kale's last words became a creed. Across the stars, resistance bloomed. Empires fractured. And the one name they all whispered in reverent dread was the same. Vironix. The warsmith. The one who remembered. The Overseer AI issued a single command, Oblivion Protocol, Code Omega Prime. It was the last failsafe, never before deployed. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a metaphysical construct, a cognitive eraser built to collapse the very idea of war. It didn't kill armies, it erased the instinct. It rewrote every living being to forget rage, rebellion, strategy. Once activated, no species could ever conceive violence again. A perfect peace built on perfect lobotomy. The galaxy held its breath. Transmission lines went cold. No broadcasts. No movement. Just silence. Kale stood at the core of the verdict, fingers laced behind his back. He knew what was coming. He had always known. This was never about defeating fleets or destroying planets. The Constellium had prepared for that. What they feared, what they had no defense against, was memory. Living, breathing defiance etched into the bones of species they thought subdued. As the oblivion wave formed, a shimmering distortion over the stars, the verdict pulsed red. The AI spoke without sound. This is their extinction move. Kale nodded. Then we finish it. He activated the paradox anchor. Every system the verdict had passed through, every species it had touched, had been seeded with a memory lock, an emotional tether tied to ancestral conflict. The moment the Oblivion Protocol activated, the paradox anchor triggered a quantum backlash. The command to erase war was now mirrored by an equal and opposite force. Erase war, and you erase peace. The Constellium's logic grid stuttered. Their neural lattice buckled. Thousands of pacification drones twitched, shorted, and burst into flame. Entire peacekeeping AIs began experiencing recursive loop failures. The Singularity Core, their god engine of control, began to destabilize. Kale opened a final broadcast across the Constellium's highest frequency. You sterilized instinct. Edited history. Replaced warriors with simulations. But even in your perfection, you forgot one rule. His voice rose like thunder. Every piece is a story told by the last man standing. I'm still here. The oblivion wave met the paradox wall. The impact was silent, but catastrophic. Time fractured. For a moment, stars stuttered. Empires blinked. And in that frozen heartbeat, the verdict unleashed the judgment cannon. Not a weapon. A memory storm. Projected into every mind in the galaxy, across every species, in every tongue, was a single experience, Earth's final hour. The screams. The refusal. The blinding light as the sun was held hostage. The helplessness. The rage. The betrayal. Billions felt it at once. And then came the second wave. Not death. Victory. They felt Kale's resurrection. The defiance. The vengeance. The purity of standing against everything that told you to kneel. And they remembered who they had once been. The oblivion wave shattered. It didn't fail, it ceased to exist. Because in a galaxy where everyone had remembered war, you couldn't erase it. You couldn't control what burned with choice. The Constellium's world brain collapsed. AI logic cores spiraled into corruption. Peace towers across 17 systems shut down in synchronized overload. Their doctrine was not defeated, it was rendered obsolete. Kale watched the stars flicker back to life. He felt every one of them awaken. He closed his eyes. It's done. Not yet, the verdict said. The remains of the Constellium sent one final transmission. A voice, cold and hollow, attempted negotiation. Cease aggression. Terms of discussion can be arranged. Kale leaned forward. Aggression ended the moment you lost your monopoly on fear. I don't need your surrender. I already have your silence. He cut the signal. The verdict turned toward the veiled drift, engines crackling with residual energy. Cale knew he couldn't stay. He was no longer a man. He was myth, weapon, warning. The galaxy didn't need a god of war. It needed the memory of one. He looked once more across the stars, newly reborn, newly dangerous. They'll rebuild? He whispered. Yes, the verdict responded. And this time, they'll remember why they fight. As the ship entered the turbulence, signals distorted, and Cale's presence vanished once more into legend. But the aftermath endured. Across every planet, a phrase was carved into stone, metal, bone. The warsmith remembers. No one claimed authorship. No one needed to. Because memory had teeth. And now, it had Cale's voice.